the Yvonne Candy Show. Motivational, inspirational, and just plain fun. Where celebrities check in and you can check out what's fresh in entertainment, business, health, finance, and more. It's all about your lifestyle. Here's your host, Yvonne Candy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Yvonne Candy Show Tuesday. Now, I don't know where that come from, but it sure sound good. Yvonne Candy Show Tuesday. I think I'm going to pick a subject and hook it up with the Tuesday that we're on, like Real Estate Tuesday or Money Talk Tuesday. And you guys know how I love my real estate investing. You know, I went to a settlement about, 2 weeks ago. And I was so excited and happy to get rid of this property. I had to go treat myself. You know, they say you're supposed to treat yourself first. So I went straight to the restaurant and treat myself to this fabulous, fabulous dinner. Which reminds me, I am thinking about my next week's guest. I really want you to check the YvonneCandyShow.com or the social media for the final results on this, because I want to have Storm Bradford on. And Storm is a criminal civil litigation consultant. He's also a foreclosure fraud examiner. And I thought that was so important because there is so many people out there that are going through hard times. They don't know where to turn, going through mortgage foreclosure. But he is supposed to be good, I heard, and supposed to be able to stop a foreclosure in its tracks. And I'm talking about in the last stages. So look out for Storm. And he will be coming on to give you some marvelous tips. And also, if you need to contact him right away or even talk to him on the show, because I'm thinking about having you guys call in to ask Storm some questions, because I know there's some people out there that really need some help in this area. Well, talking about experts, my guest today is Armin Brott, known as the Super Dad, a pioneer in the field of fatherhood. Armin is the author of 10 best-selling books on fatherhood that has helped millions of fathers. Armin has been featured on Time, Glamour, and New York Times Magazine, just to name a few. He has been a guest on television shows as Today, CBS Overnight, Fox News, Politically Incorrect, and more. We're going to talk to this super dad and get some valuable advice for you dads and you dads-to-be right after this message.
If you're an investor, home buyer, or seller looking for a realtor that understands your needs, then look no further. An experienced realtor is at your fingertips to help you through the total process of buying and selling an investment property or your home. You need a knowledgeable realtor that knows the market and can even help with resources for financing, credit, and more. Call 215-459-5950 for an experienced realtor now. That's 215-459-5950.
Just because you can't see lead paint doesn't mean it's not on your walls, doors, windows, or sills. Today, lead paint poisoning affects over 1 million children. What's more, just 3 granules of lead dust from old paint can poison your child. If your house was built before 1978 and you have kids 6 years old or younger or are pregnant, it's very important to know what to do. There are simple steps you can take to make your kids lead-free kids. Log on to leadfreekids.org or call 800-424-LEAD for more information. A message from the Coalition to End Childhood Lead Poisoning, the EPA, HUD, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the Yvonne Candy Show, where it's all about your lifestyle.
And we are back with my guest, Armin Brott. Welcome to the show, Armin.
Hey, nice to be here, Yvonne. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I thought that what you wrote about, what you're writing about, fatherhood, is very well needed. We see so much out there on motherhood and not enough on fatherhood. What made you come up with this subject?
Well, I think I started writing the books that I wished I would have had when I was an expectant father the first time. There were really no resources out there. There were no classes. There was an occasional article in a women's magazine about how to get your husband to do more stuff around the house, which was not what I was looking for as far as guidance about how to be a better dad.
Yeah.
and ended up just looking around and thinking about my own experience and the obstacles that I faced in being able to be as involved as I wanted to be, and started taking notes and writing things down, and they eventually became the first book, which was called The Expectant Father, which was all about the father's experience during and before, during, and after pregnancy.
Tell us about those experiences, Armin.
Before, during the father's experience, you mean?
Well, I wanted to talk about especially during pregnancy, because that part is so amazing to me, how the father actually shares some of the experiences with the mother, outside of things I know you have to be aware of that you need to do and pay attention to. But let us know about some of those experiences that you had.
Well, I had mostly psychological experiences. I know that some guys, a certain percentage, and nobody knows exactly, but it's somewhere between 20 and 80%,
Wow.
have physical symptoms like headaches or cramps or
Oh, okay.
toothaches or food cravings and things like that. But the psychological experience, the idea of this is a huge change that's going to happen in my life, and how am I going to be prepared for this? Am I going to be a good dad? Am I ready to do this? Can we afford this?
Yeah, it's like having a panic
kind of thing
attack,
is
huh?
it's the same for women as it is for men.
Wow. I didn't expect you to say that. I thought you, I thought you were going to say
unexpected.
Yeah, it was unexpected. I'm thinking that you were going to talk about, let's say, some of the cravings and stuff like that, which we're going to talk about in a second. But you're talking about being anxious, and it's sort of like having a panic attack or something.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, it's really interesting. Let's look at this very, very closely. The journey that women go through is exactly the same psychologically that men go through, but men are about a trimester behind, which is really kind of interesting. So in the first couple of months or so, where there's not a whole lot going on, I mean, at least her body hasn't begun to change too terribly much, but she's getting excited. She's thinking about how life is, there's something growing inside me, and this is going to be wonderful. And she's thrilled about it. And quite often, I mean, this is as silly as it sounds, but a lot of expectant dads can forget about the whole thing for a couple of days because there's really nothing to do for us. It's all in the head. But then in the second trimester, she starts turning outside, and she's looking for help. She's looking for guidance. She's looking for her mom to be a role model. She's wondering how she's going to be able to afford things and how life is going to change. And right about that time, because her belly's getting a little bit bigger and there's more doctor visits, and you can hear the heartbeat on the ultrasound, or you can see the ultrasound and hear the heartbeat, the dad starts getting excited, which is where the mom was a couple of months before.
What I think is so wonderful. What I think is so wonderful, Armin, is that you wrote these books for men because they don't have the help like moms do. Moms got their mothers. I remember those days, and I'm quite sure I'm no different from any other mother. My mother was it's like raising your child all over again. When they're pregnant, you have to be raising them all over again to help them through the pregnancy, to tell them what to do after, the child is born. But who's there to help the father?
Well, that's me, I guess. I think that was really one of the big messages of the books and everything else that I've done on fathers since then, which is you really need to know how incredibly important you are and how important it is for you to be involved with your kid, because your influence on your child's life is profound. It's just as impactful as the mom's influence. But so many guys look at their own dad and they say, well, maybe he wasn't around as much as he could have been, and we can get into the reasons for that. But and they say, well, I'm doing more. I want to be there, but I don't know how. There aren't the role models, and I don't know exactly what to do or where to go to for information. And we tend to back off a little bit because we don't know. Nobody wants to do something that they're not good at. And guys feel particularly sensitive about not doing, they're worried about doing something wrong, or the wife corrects them and tells them he's not doing it right. And so that ends up with guys not being as involved as they could be. And so that's really and truly been my mission since I started this whole thing more than 20 years ago, which is to give dads the tools that they need to be the dads that they want to be and their kids need them to be, and to give them the resources to find out what those things are.
Well, they say there's no book written for parenting, but now there is, especially for you dads. But I wanted to talk about some of the strange things, Armin, that happens, which I don't even understand, with men during the pregnancy. It's almost like you're one person. How is it possible for a woman to be going through pregnancy symptoms like the cravings and the headaches and what have you? And the father goes through the same thing. I remember when I was pregnant, my husband, I have to laugh about this every time I think about it. My husband used to eat a lot of chocolate candy. He used to love Snicker bars. He had Snicker bars all over the house, in the car, in the drawers in the house. Every room in the house he had a Snicker bar. And I was trying to figure out, wait a minute, he's going through this worse than I am. So is this one of the things that fathers-to-be can expect?
It's not unusual. It surprised me when I was reading about this, but it's really something that's very common. And I think nobody seems to be able to tell exactly. I mean, clearly you can say mom has got something going on in her body and her hormones are changing, and that's creating all sorts of different things, new things inside of her head and her body. That isn't happening with the dad because he's not pregnant. However, I think psychologically, he's saying to himself, look how much attention she's getting. And, my life is going to change too. And you know what? Hey, I'm not she's not the only one whose pants aren't fitting anymore. Pay attention to me just a little bit. And I think there's something to that.
Do you think that's why, they eat these weird combinations? I know my husband had this recipe or this combination that he used to eat that was cheddar cheese, apple pie, and dill pickles. He used to eat them all together. How can you think of something like that if you aren't actually having some sort of cravings? I don't know. I haven't been able to figure it out, but it happens.
That is kind of weird, but you hear about pickles and ice cream. I don't know what it is exactly, about salt and fat. Maybe that's what it is.
I don't know.
My
I guess
mom
it's
told
salt
me
and
about
sweet.
craving pickles and ice cream and sending my dad out at 2 a.m.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Dad probably was eating the same thing with her. But anyway, you have 3 kids now, right?
I do.
Yeah. And your wife is a delivery room architect. Now, I never heard of a delivery room architect. I know a delivery room has to get designed some sort of way, but I did not know there was an actual title of a delivery room architect. Explain that to me.
Well, first, I guess I should just, by way of disclaimer, say that's my former wife.
Oh.
And she's a healthcare architect.
Oh, it's
which
cool.
I got to say, when I first got together with her, I had exactly the same thought. It never occurred to me. You go into a hospital and you look around and you think, well, how complicated could that be? People put up walls and doors and electrical outlets, and okay. I mean, I thought the same thing about like a what's written on the outside of a tube of toothpaste. It never occurs to you that a writer actually has to write that stuff. So yeah, it's the same thing with architecture, but she actually would go into delivery rooms and she'd watch the way that people would move around the room, the way the doctors and the nurses, and sometimes they'd be stepping over electrical cords or having to go all the way around the table instead of something else, or even where the phone was on the wall, depending on if a surgeon was right-handed or left-handed.
Wow.
And she would move things around in design rooms for the most efficient flow of people and supplies and equipment and everything else. It was really fascinating.
That is fascinating. And I'm curious, what is the difference in the delivery rooms now than what they were yesterday?
I think the biggest thing is that they look like a bedroom as opposed to a hospital room, is that there's wood furniture, and there's nice cabinets, and of course those nice cabinets have all sorts of very expensive, very fancy medical equipment inside of them. But there's a nice bed, and of course the nice bed has much more fancy ability to get into positions and can move around on wheels, not like your bed at home. But they try to make it as homey as possible so that people can feel as comfortable as possible, instead of getting nervous and freaked out by all the people in white coats and all of the antiseptic smell and medical supplies around. So I think that's the biggest one, is that they really do try to make it as homey as possible.
One of the things I've heard was a tremendous difference is that your whole family can get in there. I mean, I don't know if I would want my whole family in there, but yeah, I mean, your family can come in. What was one of the other things that I know that was different? Oh, you didn't have to change rooms. I know when I had my children, you had to go from one room, and then you would go to maybe an operating room. I mean, like a labor room or something like that. So you don't have to do all of that now, huh?
No, they try to have it so that you're in labor and have the birth if it's a regular birth. If it's a C-section, then they'll probably have to take you out to a more outfitted surgical room. But if it's going to be a regular delivery, they're all set up to do epidurals in there, so they can give you the pain medication. But it is, again, it's more of a feel of giving birth at home. And you can have a lot of people in there if you want to, and I think that becomes a personal choice issue about how many people you want to have in there. Do you want to have your older kids? Are they able to handle it? Do you want to have your sister and your mother-in-law and everybody in there, or do you have to draw the line at some point?
Well, I think they're sitting in certain places, and you're basically covered up, and but one of the things that I wanted to bring out is recently I was at a childbirth, and I was taking video, and they automatically shut me down from taking the actual birth. Have you experienced that?
Well, I've heard about that kind of a thing, and I think that's a liability issue. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but I think that's a lot of the times what they're concerned about is if something goes wrong during the actual birth,
right,
and 10 years down the road that child turns out to be developmentally delayed or has a learning disability or something, there could be an attempt to sue the doctors. And if you've got video that may have captured that the cord was wrapped around the baby's neck and the doctor didn't take it off quickly enough, or somebody was 2 seconds late, or something happened. So I think that they're trying to avoid that type of documentation, which is unfortunate.
Yes, it is.
I guess the nice part about it is, in some twisted way, is that it keeps guys from hiding behind a camera and helps them to be more involved in a hands-on way with the actual birth. Because if you're the one who's the husband whose life is changing, or the partner, the male partner, and your life is going to be changed tremendously by this tiny little baby who's coming out in a few seconds, and you're watching the whole thing through a camera trying to get a great angle, you're not going to be a good support person, and you're not going to be able to grab the baby and make the umbilical cord cut and have a hands-on moment with your child that is emotionally impactful.
Well, I think in a case like that, maybe you should get mom to do it, or the mother-in-law, or whatever. In a case like that, but the part that I feel as though is very unfortunate is that there's so many things that can happen inside of that type of setting, and I can't say operating room because now you have your delivery room and you're not transferred like they used to do back in the day to an operating room. But
Yeah.
you know, so many things and you will never know. You will never know. So, you know, because you don't have that proof on video or anything like that, which could be very, very valuable. But so it has, you know, it has its pros and cons, but I believe it's more of a con than anything. My husband had videotaped one of our children's childbirth.
And have you ever watched it?
Yeah, well, I think we did maybe one time. It was unbelievable because he was actually able to get the birth itself. Now you're talking about back in the day because my children are older, you know, so they don't allow that anymore. But he almost fainted. He almost fainted. So I think every man have their tolerance level to that type of thing because, you know, it's quite an amazing thing to watch, but it is very graphic also.
Yeah, and I think a lot of guys aren't prepared for that. I mean, it becomes something, the images you can't really unsee, and can change the way that you see your partner's body, and it can change your sex life sometimes after a while.
Well, I can imagine, but believe me, guys, it all goes back. Everything just goes right back into place, so don't worry about it. Are there any tips that you can give fathers to be when you're in that pregnancy stage? You know, how to support mom?
Well, I think supporting mom and supporting yourself is do everything you can to go to every single one of the medical appointments. It's so important to be there. And you'll find if you're like most guys that the doctors or the nurses will put you off in a corner someplace. But it's also important not just to be there, but to also show up with some questions, because they need to see that you are interested in this, that you're concerned about things, you've got questions, and the more you are involved and engaged, the more they'll get you involved and engaged. And the process of being an involved dad, I really strongly believe, and there's evidence to back me up on this, that process begins before the baby shows up.
It definitely does.
Do that. Go to all the visits. That's the first thing. The second thing is read to your baby or talk to your baby at the very least. And this I'm talking about before the baby's born. Mm-hmm. That it's really hard to connect with the brand new baby afterwards. That dads, when I ask dads to, expectant fathers to imagine themselves with their baby, the first images that come to mind are things like, oh, I'm teaching them how to ride a bike, or we're throwing a ball in the backyard, right, or I'm showing them how to use a lathe or some tool. We want to mentor, we want to guide and teach, and we want interaction. But for the first little bit, first few months at least, you're not going to get any kind of reaction at all. But if you've talked to your baby, if you've read to the baby before the baby's born, and you do it on a regular basis, if you start start saying the first few words or the first few sentences of the book that you've read, the baby, even hours old, will turn to look at you.
Oh,
and
yes.
That is such an incredible thing in making guys feel close.
I noticed that. Right away. My husband, when he started talking, the baby eyes would look directly towards him, wherever, and follow him, because it was familiar with his voice. It knew his voice. That's very, very true. Well,
and it's so important for dads to feel a connection to this baby who's rather an abstract thing until the birth.
Right.
And to have that hey, the baby knows me. Oh, that's so cool. We're talking.
Right. I was listening to you talk about how it is so important to bond with your children, even toddlers. And it's things that you can do, like with your toddler for quality time. And I heard you mention one of them, like going to the store and, feeling the fruit and all of that. give fathers a few more tips on things that they can do with their toddler.
Oh, well, I think with the grocery store, I'm a big fan of produce sections of grocery stores. I mean, just when you've got a toddler you're talking about is a whole different thing than with a baby, where you might go and just rub a kiwi on the baby's hand and then a coconut or something like that and say, hey, look, those things are so different. One is rough and one is smooth. But with toddlers, it's different because they're able to actually go and touch things themselves. And so you can talk about everything. I think that's the most important thing. And it's another thing where in the classes that I teach for dads is they worry that they're not going to have that me time, or they're going to have to give up their interests or their passions because they've got this kid. And the reality of it is it's not so horribly complicated. The point is to make this child a part of your life.
Right.
And
right.
if you like sporting events, there's no reason why you can't go to an outdoor stadium and watch a baseball game or a football game or whatever it is. You don't want to go to an indoor stadium where it's incredibly loud, but there's no reason why you can't go to an outdoor concert if you don't stand by the speakers. Whatever it is that you like, your child will like. And so let your child know you and know your passion. And then you're going to end up having a little buddy who you'll love to take along with you.
Sure. Even take them to work sometimes if you can. Let them see what you're doing.
Absolutely. They need to know that.
Yeah. Tell us about your books that you have. 10 bestsellers.
That's a lot of books.
That's a lot of books. I don't even think we can cover all of that, right? I don't think.
Well, I mentioned the first one was called The Expectant Father, and it deals with pregnancy and childbirth. And then there's one that's called The New Father, A Dad's Guide to the First Year, which covers, as you might expect, the first year. And I've got a brand new edition of the book on the toddler years, which covers up until age 3. And then there's one for the school years that goes up to age 9. I haven't done the tween and teen years yet. I'm still trying to get past that one.
Well, please get to that one because I I need some
and
help.
I've got one for dads in the military who are dealing with all sorts of separation issues and distance issues and things like that.
And where can you find these books?
They're all available through my website or on Amazon. But if you go to my website, there's also podcasts and articles and all sorts of other things that people can get. It's all free. It's MrDad.com.
No, Armin, thanks so much. And you can repeat that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. MrDad.com, which is MRDAD.com.
Well,
and
Armin,
there's a store and articles and everything else there. And people can drop me a line if they've got questions.
Well, Armin, thank you so much. I had a whole slew of questions I wanted to ask you, but we've ran out of time. I enjoyed
I'll come
this.
back.
Yes, you definitely have to come back because we have to talk about the teenagers and the young adult children because I think they're difficult and we need help. So thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Yvonne.
And thank you guys for joining us again on the Yvonne Candy Show. Don't forget to follow Yvonne Candy on Twitter, Yvonne Candy 1 on Instagram, like us on Facebook at Yvonne Candy Radio, and subscribe to Yvonne Candy Radio on YouTube. Don't forget, guys, to live the life you deserve.
Thanks for listening to the Yvonne Candy Show. Want to know more? Check out YvonneCandy.com.